Hey everyone, so in my last video I showed all the stuff I got off from this jewelry supply box basically, and I said I was going to make something using the parts I got. So I'm going to be using some of the turquoise and the measuring tools. And if you didn't see that video already, I'll leave a link or a card at the top right here that you can click to go to it, or a link in the description below. So, what I'm going to do with this is make an Ankh, or however you actually pronounce that. Let's see, a little bright. So that's basically how I'm going to do it. All the black parts I'm going to cut out, and I'm going to be cutting them out of a sheet of brass. And then for the backing, I'm going to use some silver and basically an outline that is about 2 millimeters bigger than this one. So I'll have an edge, and then I'll make a top ring as I go basically. And where the turquoise comes in is the centerpiece right here. I'm going to take one of the turquoise stones and set it in the center. And this is all based on a suggestion in one of the comments of the last video on what to make. So I'll put that up here, and thank you for suggesting it. Okay, so to get started with this, I'm going to use my sheet metal basically, and just stick on my patterns. These patterns I made on my computer in Illustrator, and printed them onto some sticky paper. Just going to cut off this part, because I don't need that much extra, and then put it onto my metal. And then for my metals, a lot of people want to know what size they are, and I normally write on them their sizing. So this one's about 0.8 millimeters, and I guess I've lost that on this piece. And this is a brand new piece of silver, so I haven't put it on here yet. So about 0.6. And if you're using sticky paper like I do, make sure that the piece is pretty clean of any like sawing dust. So like this piece that has already been cut, because as soon as you put it down, it'll stick to it, and then it'll start peeling off as you're sawing, and then you lose your pattern. Okay, so for this piece, I'm going to be cutting out all the black parts. So basically, I'm going to cut the outline last, but I need to drill holes in every single one of these little black parts inside of here, and then cut them all out. And I'm also going to be cutting out the center piece inside of here. And this oval is just for reference for a stone. And then the stone's bezel and everything will be on the other piece. So I'm just going to use a center punch. And then I'm just going to go over every black bit. Alright, so I have everything marked. And you'll notice that up in here I didn't mark the little tiny ones, because my drill bit isn't small enough to even drill into those. So I can't do anything with them, so I'm just going to leave them off. I'm going to be using a what was it, 1.3 millimeter.
I was actually wrong
drill
about
bit
the size. It's actually 0.8 millimeters.
on a flex shaft to go through all of this. When drilling stuff like this, make sure that you have a pretty good and sharp drill bit. So there we go, a bunch of holes. Maybe look on the other side. Now we got to cut all of those. So just going to do normal piercing cuts to this. And I'm going to start with the biggest cut, which is the center.
So you might have noticed I'm using a Green Lion jeweler saw frame. Well, you'll be happy to know that I contacted Green Lion Studios, and we're going to be giving away one of these in this video. So to enter this giveaway, all you have to do is click the link in the description or click on the link in my pinned comment. This will take you over to a very simple form that all it needs is your email address and your name, so I can contact you if you're the winner. And if you'd like to double your chances and get a secondary entry, all you need to do is share this video on your social media page of your choice and provide the link to that in the form, and you'll have a second entry into this contest. This contest is only valid in the US, so sorry everyone that's international, and the winner will be announced in my next video. Alright, so that's about it, so let me get back to the video.
Okay, so now that I have the middle cut out, we can start doing all the rest of the pieces. And the reason why you do the inside of this first, or at least I like to do the inside first, is I have more material to sturdy up everything, and it lessens my chances of bending this as I'm working on it. And then I cut out the outside. There we go. Just need to clean up some of the edges and take this paper off, and it should be good to go. At least for this part. Now I have to cut out the silver. Okay, so now that I have all that off there, and still needs clean up, but I'll do that at the same time that I do the silver piece. I have to cut out the silver piece now. And this isn't going to work with this saw, because this piece of silver is way too big and I can't fit it inside of it. So what I'm going to do is just cut around here. I'll just cut straight up here and then across and use this little piece to cut. So now that I have a smaller piece of silver, or sheet metal in general, I can use this, because if I was using anything bigger, it hits up here. And there we go for the silver one. So this one took about 9.5 minutes to cut out. This took about 2 hours. This is pretty much how they're gonna go. But I need to clean up the edges and everything still. Also, I have to figure out how I'm setting stone and what stone I'm putting in there. So, these are all the stones I got from that box. And I'm going to see which one I like and see if it actually fits. So that one fits, but it's real tight. And if I'm using any type of bezel wire, I might not be able to get everything to fit in there. This one fits a bit better, but it's kind of flared at the bottom. I can go and cut the bottom a little bit and make it so I'll have more room. It's probably the one I'm going to use, unless I want to use something smaller. I think I'm going to use the larger of the stones I had, because it fits in there pretty much perfectly. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus on it and not drop everything at once. There we go. So now I just need to make a bezel for that. But before I do that, I need to clean up all my pieces on here where I cut to smooth everything out. So to do that, I'm going to use some of these that have really sharp ends that I can actually fit them inside of the details, and use my Flux shaft to do so. So basically I'm just going to go on the inside of all of these and just clean them up a bit. So now I'm just going to go over the top of it and take down any burrs that are sticking at the top and the sides a little bit, and then I'll go back over it some more with a file to clean up everything. Alright, so that's the brass piece. Looks like it's pretty cleaned up. It's going to get it polished and everything after I solder it onto the silver piece. But now I need to clean up the silver piece. Okay, there we go. They're all nice and cleaned up. So I need to make a bezel for this stone. I'm going to use some fine silver bezel wire. But I'm going to have to cut it down a bit because this and this are not going to match. As you can see, it's a lot taller than the stone. So we need to find out exactly how tall I need to make this. So this whole stone is about 3.75 millimeters, and I don't need it to be that tall because it would have the same problem. I want it to come to about here. So about 1.8 millimeters. So all I'm going to do is take my calipers and put it up to the edge of the bezel so I can't move past it, and kind of push up against it and push down with the top and pull it across. Now we'll make a line in the bezel wire. And that line right there is basically from this side up is how much I need. So I need to cut this. And because this is fine silver and super thin, you can actually just cut it with scissors. Just try not to do this with really good scissors because they're going to dull them out. So now all I'm going to do is take this new little bezel part and make sure that the flattest side is going to be down, and just kind of wrap it around the stone. And it's going to be a little finicky because it's so small. So what I'm going to do is overlap them and then mark it using something sharp to scribe a line to where the two meet. So you can see it right here. And all I need to do is cut that. I'm going to cut it a little bit on the longer side because I can always remove material, but I can't really add material too easily. So now I'm just going to flatten these out and make sure they line up. Alright, and then I just need to solder that together. So to solder this, all I need to do is put some flux on it, right over the solder joint, and then add a piece of solder. I'm going to be using a piece of hard solder. So when doing something like this, be very careful because you can melt this super quick. And once you do that, just put it into some water, cool it down, and you should be able to pull it off. So, because this is going to be pretty tight fit and I soldered it inside of here, I need to clean it up a bit. So I'm just going to use a small polishing tool and clean it up. So yeah, that fits perfectly in there. Well, in this piece at least. To the point that I can pick this up and it'll probably just stay. So, very tight fit. So now I need to solder all this together. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to do sweat soldering, which is when I take some solder pieces and put it onto just this piece on the back,
heat it just until it melts, and then clean it off, come back, and then put it on top of this piece and heat this from the bottom, and that will make the solder melt and connect the two pieces. And then you shouldn't be able to see any on the outsides. So I'm just going to put some flux all over the back of this. And if you're ever wondering what I'm using, like material-wise or tools, I tend to leave links in the description of the videos to everything I have. So I'm going to be using medium solder and just kind of placing it all over the place on the back of this. So once you're done doing that, you're going to have to heat the piece to get it off of the little plate because it will get stuck. So there we go. It has a bunch of little solder points all over it. Now I need to pickle this to make sure everything's all clean, and then I can start putting it onto the back plate. So what I'm going to have to do is put flux all over both pieces to make sure that everything is going to flow properly with the solder and everything will stick together. And the same thing with the bezel. And I am going to add a couple more pieces of solder to make sure that bezel is going to stay on. Alright, that should be good. Now I just need to heat it from the underside. Because as you can see, I'm using a tripod with a screen on the bottom, and then I have my ventilation fan right there. So as I was heating it, I saw that this piece right here doesn't look like it actually soldered down, and it did bend when I was cutting it, so it is up a little bit. So I'm going to quench and cool this, clean it off with some pickling, and just kind of tap this down with the hammer and go back over it and make sure that it's going to be stuck down. Okay, so here it is after I took it out of the pickling solution, and you can tell it's now copper looking. And that's because when you put brass inside of a pickling solution, it will actually start to eat away the nickel and leave this copper look to it, which can be buffed off or ground off. But I'm not going to worry about that right now because I have to solder it again and put it back in there. But we need to fix this a little bit by hitting it with a hammer. So I'm using this rawhide mallet so I don't leave any marks on here as I'm doing this. Also, I'm being careful not to hit the bezel because I'll smash that and then have to heat the whole piece and take it apart.
Alright, everything feels flat now, and it's actually sitting flat. It bowed a little bit from quenching and heating it, so that flattens it back out. So I'm going to reflux the piece. And this would just kind of help with the scaling problem that I'm going to get. Or not scaling, but it'll clean faster in the pickling solution. And I'm going to add one more piece of solder down here to fix that little gap that didn't solder properly. And just like last time, I'm going to heat it from the bottom. My solder jumped out because everything's boiling on here now. There we go. Perfect. Gotta push that solder down one more time. Hopefully it's one more time. And then when it does flow, I'm going to use a solder pick to push down on that area just to double check to make sure that everything's going to go where it needs to be. There we go. Much better. Okay, this time I'm going to just let this cool on its own so it doesn't warp when I put it into water. And I'm going to do this by putting it onto my hammering spot of my bench pin, because it's a large piece of metal, as you can see, that will absorb the heat from this and cool it down faster. And then I'll throw it back into my pickling solution to clean it all up, and then I can start doing the finishing work and testing to make sure that the stone is actually going to fit and all that fun stuff. Okay, so here it is all cleaned up after coming out of the pickling solution. So, I need to set the stone and clean this up. I'm going to clean it up first, but I also want to cut a hole back here so when I put the stone in, you can see the back of it through here, and so if the stone goes in and gets stuck and I need to take it out or whatever, I can just push it out through the back. So to do this, I'm just going to use a little scribe pencil I have. It's basically a pencil that has a piece of metal inside of it that's sharpened. So I can scratch the surface and see where I want to be cutting. And I'm just going to roughly draw this in by hand. Alright, that should be good. Now I need to drill a hole in it. And we need to saw it out. So there we go. And if you need to clean up your area inside of stuff like this that's super small, you can use a Q-tip, because I couldn't really see anymore because there was so much dust on it.
and it's hard to see. Anyways, let's get the stone in and see if it fits and if I need to do any more modifications. Yep, looks like it fits perfect. With a little bit of gap at the bottom, but that'll be fine. And then here's the back. Go pop that back out. So now I'm just going to clean up any of the edges or all of this copper off of here, and some solder bits that crept up on top. Well, there we go. It's all nice and brass looking again. But as I finish that, I realize I have no way of hanging this. So I need to solder a piece on the back, which means all this is going to turn copper looking again. And I'm going to have to do what I just did over again. But I'll save you the suffering of watching that again. But I will show you how I put a ring on the back of this. I'm just going to use one of these. And about here. Probably the biggest one. And wrap it around it in a U shape. And now I need to hammer it down because it kind of twisted weird. So, let's see how this is going to look. So not bad. Flip it over and see where I need to cut it at. Okay, so I'll cut about here. So I'm just going to use this and even them out, the two edges that is. Alright, that should be pretty good. And I'm going to attach this using some easy solder. But it's basically going to go on like that. So I'm just going to use some third hand pliers, or this third hand setup, to hold it in place. And then put some flux on it. Make sure everything's lined up properly. And then use some easy or extra easy solder, because you don't want to have anything else fall off. And here we go. And all I need to do is put this through the pickling solution one more time, clean everything up like I said, and then I'll be back. Okay, so everything's all cleaned up and pickled and all that fun stuff. So I did try to add a black patina to this, and it didn't seem to work after I polished the whole thing because the polisher just took all of it off. So that's why you might notice a color change in the metals between these two cuts. Okay, so let's put the stone in here. Okay, just making sure it's actually flat in there. If you're looking for a more in-depth bezel setting tutorial, I have one, and it'll be linked in the description and in a card above.
Oh, there we go. All nice and set. And it's all flat back here too. And it should be good to go that way. So if you ever need to set something like that, this tool is awesome for it. I'll leave a link in the description showing it off. Or not showing it off, but showing where to get it. But it basically just hooks up to your flex shaft, and it's a little tiny hammering tip. And it makes it so you can push everything in really easy. Alright, so I ran into a little bit of a problem with polishing this up and leaving the black in the background. The polishing wheel actually took it off. So I'm just going to go with this look, because I don't have any polishing wheels that won't get inside of there. But I think it looks pretty good how it is. Nice and shiny with dull spots all around the silver. And the back I just brushed it to give it a brush finish. So I'm gonna go coat this with a lacquer, which is this lacquer, to keep it from tarnishing, because the brass on this will tarnish over time and lose all of its shininess and start turning green or whatever colors it decides.
So here it is, all cleaned up and sealed and ready to go. So I hope you found this entertaining or helpful, and if you did, leave a like. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, leave a comment below. And if you want to be updated whenever I put out new videos, like my next video that's going to tell the winners of the giveaway for the Green Lion saw frame, subscribe to this channel. Alright, well, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.